I'm not trying to review this device telling you, oh, this is what I did to make it great. But if you want to do that, this is the E6 Plus, and we're definitely going to talk about it. You know what? Just roll the intro. Hi, I'm Clef, and you're watching Game Tech Talk. First and foremost, I'll put the specs on screen. Now, this is rocking an RK3566, so chances are you're familiar with the chip. Nearly flawlessly anything up to PS1. Dreamcast, some games you will, some games you won't. GameCube, you might be able to run some games, but better to assume that you won't. Same DS, you might be able to run a few, and PSP as well. PS2, you can just forget about it. Anything past that, really. 3DS, you can forget about it. There's a few color options and a few options in terms of if you're interested in buying. So let's cover that. I have the what I call the Joker edition because, you know, it's purple and green. It just screams the Joker for me. If you look at the listing of this product and you see, for example, 40 gigabytes, that sounds kind of weird. It's because if you buy one of these options that comes with games, you're going to have two different micro SDs because this can take two. One is for the Gelos operating system and the other one is to store your ROMs. But this one also boots Android, which we'll definitely touch base during the video. Before we dive any further, let me just address this product has been sent for review. All opinions are my own and they get to see the video at the same time as everybody else, as is always the case with this channel. All right, I also do want to point out this review is really focused mainly on the hardware. And by hardware, I mean like the actual components, the buttons. So we'll go over that as I'm playing games, but really that will be the focus. Now, as you can see, you have some RGB, more like lighting, so you cannot change the color or anything, but you have it around the sticks and as well on the grips. And yeah, basically we're gonna boot a few games so that you guys can get a feel of, you know, what it feels like. I'll be talking about the different components and how they feel. Hopefully I'll cover it all during the video so that you have an informed decision to make if you would be interested in making one towards this product. So here we're running Gelos. Now, assuming that you have ROMs on your SD card, you should just see the UI. You might be familiar with it. If not, very easy to navigate, very straight to the point. And it does have a Wi-Fi chip in this device. So if you wanted to connect to have your retro achievements, you can do all that. All right, so starting with the sticks. Now, here's an interesting thing about this device. You have two sticks, right? Obviously, that goes without saying. You guys can see for yourselves, right? But the left one is a Hall effect stick, whereas the right one is an ALPS stick. Now, the explanation from the manufacturer and creator of this device is that basically you're not going to be using the right stick on this device all that much, so they didn't want to spend the extra money to have a stick that has better reliability, knowing that it wasn't going to be used all that well. Personally, I don't think it's a bad thing considering that they really went for extremely low costs. Now, by low cost, what I mean is how much it costs them to manufacture the device and how much profit they aim to make. And the reason why I can talk like that is because we had a very tight-knitted kind of not relationship, but forum. Let's call it an open forum where we made recommendations and looked at the device with them, and they told us about their process. But all that to say that they tried to find ways to minimize costs, and I don't see that as a bad thing. Personally, I kind of agree that we probably won't be using the right stick all that much. Now, one could argue, okay, well, why is it even there? I mean, maybe from a symmetrical standpoint of view, and because you will, you know, occasionally need it, like even some PS1 games do need it, but for the most part, will you? Not really. Now, we're talking about Nintendo Switch types of sticks. They feel as you would expect from a Nintendo Switch kind of stick. So, you know, it's not the sticks with the best clarity, with the most movements and largest radius, not even close. It'll do what it's designed to do. It's not necessarily bad, and I would say that in terms of inputs, as much as I'm not a big fan of the Nintendo Switch style of sticks, it's probably one of the better things on this device, if I'm being honest. And it just froze. Okay, so well, you know what? That's a great excuse to switch games if I can reboot somehow. Now, as we're booting, the reason why I'm letting you know that we have an open forum kind of situation, it'll make sense by the end when I'm doing the conclusion. I think it is a piece of information that is important for me to share because of the way that I perceive this device and what I think is important going in the future. But you know what? Let's keep that for later in the video. Okay, so here's an issue that we run into as I'm trying to get into the D-pad. Oftentimes, as I'm switching, it doesn't always do it, but it'll have that weird behavior as if the D-pad is sticking. It might be my unit. There you go. So I don't know why it does that sometimes, but it does. It just did it again. So let's go into Street Fighter 2 Turbo, boot it, and see what we can make of it. First and foremost, it's not the worst D-pad, but it is by no means the greatest. In fact, I would rate it pretty low average. But there's a few things that I want to address when it comes to it. We're clearly having a situation of form over function. You know, I think they were going for something that is very popular in D-pad nowadays, you know, the Xbox controller style D-pad. But the problem is, clearly we're not having tactile buttons here. It's a membrane. So it kind of doesn't really feel all that good. There is a center pivot, which that is not a bad thing, but because there is no syncing part, like it's basically just a texture difference on the diagonals, it's very easy to have misclicks on other sides. I'm not getting really misreadings in terms of diagonal, so that's good. As long as you hit the diagonal, you're gonna be fine. In terms of doing the Hadouken, like for the most part, I pull them out, but the form is so much more the target here in terms of function. And you know, I can understand that some D-pads will focus on that first, but I do believe that it has to be somewhat of a mix of both. Pulling out a shadow punch, is that what the impossible? Dragon punch, no, I think it's dragon punch. I just can't pull it off. Like the Hadouken and the haktarak, no problem. But the dragon punch, I haven't successfully launched a single one. You have no tactile feedback to understand when you're moving from right to left or from left to down, left to up, whatever. You know, hitting the diagonals is easy. The form kind of works well for that, but making those motions is not really all that good. But the moment it gets a little more complex, it's not good. And again, the form makes it so that even if you're holding, like you literally, as I was about to say, I was holding right and you saw Ryu jump. Even if you're holding, the function is lacking because you don't have that tactile feedback to understand when your thumb is moving just a little too much up north and will make you jump, or going a little too much south and will make you crouch. It's just not designed properly for that. Yeah, maybe if it was tactile, at least you would have that, you know, clicky noise and that tactile feedback, which we don't have here because it's membrane. I like what they were trying to achieve, and you'll see that this is a common theme, but I feel like we're facing a situation of trying to do too much with too little. And I get that they're going for like a very specific aesthetic, the Steam Deck, with the modern, very appreciated kind of D-pad, but you have too little under the hood to be able to pull it off. I'm just gonna move to a different game and let's talk about the face buttons. Now, by the way, when it comes to the little M sign key here, it does like have different shortcut possibilities, like taking you out of a game like I just did now, and other things. It doesn't really work all that well on Android, but it does work here. Let's try Burnout Legends actually. See how that goes. So we're gonna try a PSP game. So of course we're gonna be able to take advantage of the full panel now. So that's gonna be a benefit. And let's see how it runs. Originally, when I got the device, everything was in Chinese. I had to change it to English, but even now I'm seeing some like leftovers of the settings in the emulators where it's in Chinese, and that's going to create extra hassle on the user to have to change these manually. I saw it in RetroArch as well, because most of the devices you'll be running is running through Gelos as an operating system front end, but when it comes to the actual emulation portion, it's going to be done in the back end, most times by RetroArch, or in this case by PPSSPP. So because they said it, it's in Chinese. And now clearly the graphics, I'm pretty sure I think I am higher than native. And yeah, it's not running all that great. An issue that I have ran into is in terms of the shortcut, it doesn't seem to work. The M key is responding as what seems to be the start button. Pretty sure it is. So then you're kind of stuck in that situation of, oh, okay, well, how do I get into the emulator UI? Because I feel like this could run if I was able to lower the resolution. Honestly, I think I'm even higher than 1x. It looks like it might be 2x because this is looking a little too sharp for my taste in considering the resolution of this screen. But yes, back to the face buttons. They're decent. They're membrane. Like for example, the A doesn't go down all the way. It kind of protrudes a little bit to the left of it. It's kind of the same with the B. The X and Y are pretty much flat when you push them down. But again, it kind of goes with some inconsistencies, and oftentimes you're going to see in some of those handhelds where the buttons far to the right is going to be designed with a little bit of a slope or a curve to address these kinds of situations. I don't necessarily put the blame on that when it comes to the developer, because I feel like they're trying to do something out of nothing kind of thing. They're cutting corners in terms of the manufacturing of this device to keep the cost as low as possible. As a reviewer, I have to point it out. This is not a big flaw. By no means is it a game-breaking one, not even close. It's those little nuances that I notice when playing with this device. And by the way, this is a touchscreen, but on Jellos it doesn't seem to operate. This only works on Android. And there might be a shortcut to exit easily, but if there, okay, I managed to see, it's all in Chinese. So yeah, I'm just gonna quit the emulator. Thankfully, I remembered how. And let's just move to a different game. Let's try Dreamcast. Let's try Power Stone 2 as we talk about the shoulder buttons. Now, when looking at the shoulders, triggers, by the way, they're both tactile. So there's no analogs here when it comes to the shoulder buttons. And yeah, for the most part, the L1 and R1, it's a kind of button that we're used to seeing. I kind of like the shape. You know, they have a little bit of a slope here, very easy to push. And considering the types of systems that you will emulate with this device, it's most likely the buttons that you would push the most. So I like that they're kind of accentuated to be able to easily target them if that's what you want to do. So I think that's actually a great design when it comes to the L1 and R1. L2 and R2, they have a little bit of a slope, not my favorite. Also not the buttons you're going to be using the most based off of the systems you might be emulating. I don't mind them. I think they're okay, nothing special. I definitely agree with the fact that they're not analog. There would have been no reasons, but already just looking at the texture, I think it might not even be 1x here, but it's definitely better than what PPSP was. PPSSPP was way too increased in terms of resolution. If the developer can't be bothered to change the language, I'm not going to bother as a reviewer to fix the issues for them. I want to make sure that you guys know what to expect when you receive the device. If the developer sees this is not a hate on you. I am just here doing my job. It's a very kind individual. That's not the issue here. It's just, I got to keep it real. That's what I do. Now, as you can see here, Dreamcast is working pretty nicely. And yeah, in terms of the shoulder buttons, I mean, oh, funny enough, they use L2 and R2 here. Yeah, I don't have anything against them, to be honest. If I was the one designing the button, I don't mind them being tactile, but I potentially would put something to dampen the clicks. It's not really the nicest, smoothest, most satisfying clicks. I think it would probably be a very inexpensive little touch that would give it a little more quality and feel. In terms of the plastic, in terms of everything else, it's okay. Nothing special, nothing bad necessarily. Just, it's not the device that is designed to blow you away, in my opinion. It just is something that is very cost efficient. So let's go ahead and change games. And then last but not least, and to do that, I'm gonna try Nintendo DS. Here, let me try Grand Theft Auto Chinatown Wars. I mean, it's very small for the DS, but it might work, we'll see. Now, of course, another thing, and I'm hoping the retail units would have a manual to highlight what the shortcuts are, but if you're familiar with Jello, some might come very naturally to you, but you should know that, and based on certain emulators, it's not necessarily going to be the same shortcut everywhere. A lot of people bash Embernix operating systems and what they do when it comes to that, and I, for one, wholeheartedly welcome them because it gives you a more persistent and consistent experience throughout. And that's something I deplore when looking at a device like this, is why would I have to remember a shortcut when I'm in RetroArch, a shortcut when I'm probably not even in RetroArch right now. I don't even know what DS is running on, what core or what emulator. Okay, I'm unable to run Grand Theft Auto, so I'm gonna try Metroid Prime Hunters. I don't expect much. I feel like that would be a harder game to run, but who knows, we might be surprised. So when looking at the screen is decent, not the best viewing angles, but again, You know, at that price range, I don't necessarily expect an AMOLED panel either. I can be reasonable. It does seem to run 60 FPS just fine. I haven't had anything along the lines of scan line issues or massive ghosting issue. I'd say the panel is decent. I would say that the panel is probably one of the better aspects of this device. I'm not sure what other handheld uses the panel, but it's not a bad one. There's no like glaringly bad light bleeding issues. Definitely crushes the blacks for sure. I don't know if it's going to come across on the camera, but the blacks look kind of a navy blue. But again, I don't expect something along the lines of the RG556 either. I think that's just being reasonable. When it comes to the audio, oh my god. All right, let's try it again. When it comes to the audio is bearable as long as you keep the speakers low. And it can get very high if you crank it all the way up, but it sounds terrible. You don't want to do that. So definitely a speaker that is best left at. So Select kicks this out. Okay, so again, you know what? Select shouldn't be kicking me out. The Nintendo DS did have a select button. Both M and select kicks me out. So again, if there can't be efforts to make sure that these kinds of things don't happen, I will not make efforts to try to make it run. I mean, from the menu, which does have a little bit of 3D element, it did seem to run okay. But again, it's just not the kind of system that you buy this device for. There is so much better. Don't buy this for DS. Don't buy this for Dreamcast. Don't buy this for PSP. Even Nintendo 64. I mean, I think there will be certain inconsistencies. I tried Mega Man 64 out of camera and it did run well. Perfect Dark is very hard to run. So I don't expect much, but to be fair, I'm really putting a serious amount of stress on this chip. But yes, back to the audio, it's decent as long as you don't crank it up, but you do have a 3.5mm jack, and it's one of those devices that I would expect to use using a pair of headphones. Yeah, don't crank up the sound on that device. It's really not designed for that. Not even a little bit. This is tough. Hall effect on these little Switch joysticks, in my opinion, is oversensitive. So I know a lot of people would like to hear that it's Hall effect. Personally, I wouldn't have done that. But anyways. But it seems like it could run it. Just not easy to do. Pew. Pew, pew. Pew, pew. All right, I need to stop doing. Why am I even doing that? I don't know. Let's just move on to the other thing that might give certain appeal to this device for some people. Let's go on Android. If you're in Jealous, of course, you can just hold power to shut the device. And basically what you want to do to remove the right micro SD as such. And you want to power it on, and it should give you the GameMT logo, as you can see here. And we're just going to put it back because at this point it should kick us into Android. So I said earlier, this is a theme that you'll see when going into Android. This is a very clear example of trying to do too much with too little. And this is, in my opinion, a very recurring kind of quality that we used to have with a lot of Chinese products, where they were like, it doesn't matter that it doesn't work good, we're just gonna give you everything. You know, even Embernic devices and Powkitty devices used to do that way back when. But not even talking about retro handhelds, just talking about products that were designed in China oftentimes did that. It tried to promise you the world. I'm thinking even GPD, when they started making handheld PCs, they would promise you the world because it could do it, but never in a million times could it ever do it well. And I feel like this device is leaning into the same kinds of habits that we don't see all that much anymore from a lot of Chinese companies. It's like they understood not to overpromise and underdeliver. But this device, when it comes to Android, I hate to say it's exactly that. So I tried to run RetroArch runs. You can run the emulators, and quite frankly, if there is one thing positive about Android on this device, I would say that you're probably better off running your emulation there because you have a much better control and you can operate from an English point of view. But that means you will have to tinker a lot. You will have to set up all your emulators and all that thing. If you want to do that, I would argue that being on Android kind of saves a lot of what this device is all about. Android itself is not great. So one of the issues you might run into is when you try to boot up the Play Store, it should not work. And there's been discussions right now, the developer might remove it altogether. I personally hope they won't, because if they do, that means you would have to jailbreak this device to be able to get the Play Store on it. Whereas if it is here, by default, it's not going to work, but you can follow easy tutorials online on how to certificate your Play Store on your device. It's very not complicated. You have to wait a few hours. The process takes 5 minutes, but by the time it is done, it uploads to Google servers, and then you have to wait until Google approves your device. And it works for me. I'm able to go into the Play Store. I can download any app. Now, of course, because this is not a fully registered device, there's a chance that you'll go into the Play Store and you'll run into APKs or games that you're not even able, or software that you're not even able to download because the developers of those software have not given the free reins and they don't recognize this device as being compatible. So that's a thing you might run into. But here's the reason why I think having the Play Store is still important. The Play Store comes with certain Google services on Android, and if you don't have that, you can run into games that will just not run, even if you get the APK supplied from external sources. So by having it, it does give you a better reliability, but once again, is it the device to do any of that? Not in a million years. There's a lot of issues, and we'll get into those really quickly. If you're wondering, you're not rooted. So in terms of changing your buttons, if they don't give us a tool, you're not able to do that. And the only tools that you have here that comes default is the possibility to address the LEDs, so if you want to put them on or off, and then the possibility to change your to calibrate your joysticks, which, you know, I'm not even sure how it works because it just does that. That's basically what you have. In terms of settings, you don't have anything extra. You don't have the possibility to change your buttons, your layout, change to a Switch or a Nintendo layout or Xbox layout. You can't do any of that. So here's the issue that I have. I'm in Roblox, right? And I'm trying to exit to show you a different game, a different app. No matter what I do, I cannot get out. There's just no way. Doesn't matter the buttons, that doesn't matter the shortcut, I'm stuck. They haven't done the very basic job of mapping M to return home on Android. And that causes so many issues because usually you'd be able to use B to do back, but if you're playing a game, it will register that as a controller input and it will not do the back that Windows sees the B as a back button. So you're stuck. You're stuck. The only way is to fully reboot. And you know what, guys? I'm gonna end it there because believe me, this is much harder than it seems. A lot of my experience with this device has been what has been showcased in this video. And I'm glad that I captured a lot of it because I don't want to seem like I'm just gratuitously bashing a device. That's not what I'm trying to do. And when it comes to GameMT and when it comes to the developer that we've been in communications with, I appreciate their passion. I appreciate them being gamers and wanting to bring devices to the market that people can enjoy and for affordable prices. However, there needs to be some sort of reining it down, bringing it back home, back on the drawing board, see what works, what doesn't, and if it doesn't, get it out of the way. That is just noise that is stopping me from being able to really appreciate what is probably the best aspect of this device, which I still haven't talked about, and it is the ergonomics. The ergonomics are surprisingly comfortable. In fact, it's probably one of the better handhelds I have held. One of the better retro handhelds. I'm sorry, I got a little bit ahead of myself here, because you have a nice curve, a nice bump. It feels really, really good. I like the style. I like that mini Steam Deck aesthetic they got going, but there is too much that this device is trying to do and too little that it has to be able to do it effectively. I would say that even if you were to release a E6 Ultra that costs $200, has a better chip and better buttons, I would need proof that the developer understands the foundations of what makes a handheld great. I feel like I'm running into someone that is very passionate, which I can appreciate, but still has more growing to do, which is not to offend or not to insult. It just, to me, it feels like there is a lot more work that needs to be done, and there needs to be an understanding of who you're going up against. You're going up against companies like Retroid, Embernic, Powkitty, and so many more. How does your device manage to capture something that people haven't seen? And arguably, Android could be that, but Android is botched on this handheld. In concept, I like where it's going, but in execution, this needs to keep cooking. Let them cook. This hasn't done cooking. I'm kind of going in circle here, so I'm gonna wrap it up. Would I recommend this device? For the most part, no. If you've never owned a retro handheld, this is definitely not where you want to start. This is going to be more frustrations than anything else. If you are a tinkerer, if you're the kind of person that you like those devices because you think, you know what, I want to open it, I want to see what I can do with the D-pad, maybe change it, maybe put a new membrane, maybe put some tape to, change the feel of it, then yes, that is a great tinkering device because you have a lot of work ahead of you. But if you're trying to buy something where you want like a brain dead kind of experience, plug and play, just hold it and have fun, that's just not the thing I'd recommend. You have a lot of options in the RK3566 chip that are less expensive for much superior quality in terms of build quality, and also, again, keeps it to a minimum so that whatever you're going to be doing on those devices will work. Here, it doesn't. The D-pad, as you could see in the operating system, was janky, was going all over the place. Everything is in Chinese. The shortcuts doesn't work on certain emulators. And again, I'm not trying to review this device telling you, oh, this is what I did to make it great. But if you want to do that, you can. And this is probably a good device to do that. I'm here to look at this device and ask myself, if this lady of 55 years old wants to play the Nintendo games that she used to love and she buys this, will she enjoy that device? No. This father of 37 years old has 2 kids, works a 9 to 5 from Monday to Friday, picks it up because he wants to clock in a few hours when he's on the can every day or so, every 30 minutes, play a little bit of Super Metroid M. Is that the device for this person? No. Because that will require way more time just to make it work properly, and you could potentially never get there. So again, and I reiterate, and I repeat myself, if you are the developer of this device and you watch this video, understand that I am not judging you as a person. I'm not judging your company. I am judging this device because I want to see better. And I know, because I've seen the passion that comes out of your enthusiasm, I know that you want to do better. I just feel like rather than releasing a device that is not ready, you need to take more time and speak with people, have conversations. You have the Retro Handhelds Discord where you have a lot of very enthusiastic people about these devices. Gather some thoughts, gather some opinions to understand how you can make this better or any future iterations, because I see the potential. I see the enthusiasm, I see the passion, I see the desire to make a device that a lot of people around the world would enjoy picking up and have fun with. It just isn't that yet. And that is it, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully I'll see you on the next one. Peace.